He has published 7 books of poetry, including the one that's back there on the table. This is What the Desert Surrenders, which is new and selected poems, so please don't let him go home with those tonight. It should go home with you. Buy them. For many years he's taught poetry workshop at Northern Nevada Correctional Center and published an annual journal of their work, Razor Wire. In 1995, he received the Governor's Award for Excellence in the Arts, and in 2006 was awarded the Rosemary McMillan Lifetime Achievement in Art Award from Sierra Arts Foundation. Humanist, activist, and educator Shaun Griffin has spent a lifetime building bridges where there were none for all members of the human community. He's a co-founder and director of Community Chest, a nonprofit agency serving children and family in northwestern Nevada since 1991, and former founding director of the state's Homeless Education Office. And we're just thrilled to have him in our state tonight. Welcome, Shaun Griffin.
Thank you, Joel, very much, and I'm thrilled to be reading with Lance and see so many friends in the audience. Good to come home. So this book is my life work, and it's hard to know that when you start out as a young poet so many years ago, but there's 32, 33 years of poetry in here. There's a couple poems to my kids when they were born, and they're now almost 30, so that I know, that math I know intimately. And it's hard to imagine that you can go along this much time and see these poems still in the world. I'll start and read a few from the new section because the new poems interest me most, and then I'm going to take a small diversion and read one of the poems from the workshop because it was a pretty special event, which I'll tell you about in just a second. So these are, there's about 25 new poems, and then the poems from the last 4 books are in this collection. I want to start with one to my sons. As I am wont to do when I'm away from my family, I read about them first and I think about them first. The last time the eldest left with the next youngest for good was 3 years ago, when Pavarotti was in the hospital and dying. And those of you that are about my age or closing in, you know what it means when your children pull out of the driveway for the last time. It's a massive hole in your heart. So this is an ode to them. My sons who have no opera to console them. Pavarotti lies in a hospital bed, and my sons who have no opera to console them pulled from the driveway. I held them in the garage without words, poet who could say nothing. And my hands, the empty tools of fatherhood, chased their bikes from the greasy floor, fished laundry from the pile, and dressed the room for a guest. There was nothing to recall but pictures and stones we climbed in the dusted wind. And if I gave them tools to scale some mountain other than this one, where their 20-odd years were spent, they were shed like teeth on a saw blade. We emptied our pockets this day, the opera cried Luciano, but I wanted the sound of boys in a garage of sawdust, the wood chiseled to ants, leaves, and a last prescient glow in the mirror when the youngest ate the image of his father, shoulders away. A couple years ago, I was at a conference on Robinson Jeffers, a poet whom I dearly love, and although he's gotten a pretty bad rap since he died, I don't believe that he was the misanthrope everybody made him out to be. I just think he was a person who cared deeply about the place that he lived in, and we weren't able to understand that. So this is a poem to Robinson Jeffers. Reading Jeffers in the rainy January dawn. Reading Jeffers in the rainy January dawn, what is to say that stone and bird and tree cannot? Because like Whitman before him, he was a guest of the cliff, the gull, the leaf, And worse for us, he rode through the durance of 2 wars, with melancholy to guide from shorebird to stone, then died, a deer laid down to coast water. And, without sanctuary, memorized the trinity of flora, fauna, and we, however inhuman, rake back to ourselves. Of course he lost faith. We strove to divide the words from the man on the seacoast who stood like Machado, the ancients, the mothers keening under the weight of anguish and light. A man apart from the abacus of time and state that gilded now could not destroy. Impatient, humbled, sonorous poet, he chose the stones, the birds, and the trees to venerate beauty and truth, the delirious constant in the new world, no man without them. This next poem is a love song to Nevada, written in the spring. I spend a lot of time in my car driving across the state, and as you know, it's big and open like your state. So anytime I see something growing, it's kind of a small miracle. And this is right after spring came to the desert. The title line of the book is in this poem as well. Rain outside Lovelock, late March. And for those of you that are I-80 trekkers, maybe you've gone to Burning Man or something, you know Lovelock's the last place you get to before you go to Burning Man from here. Rain outside Lovelock, late March. The first whiskers poke from greasewood. Clouds sulk the ridge beyond an alfalfa farm. A roadside cross pretends to grieve, and the few willows reach to rye patch, a last body of water before the dry, endless miles. This could be the road to Inuvik, yet there is no warrior at the horizon. The landscape is quarantined. A desert peach offers pink rosaries to the slopes, bladed for minerals. Once white and hard with tranquility, now dust in the atmosphere. This is what the desert surrenders. To the magpie bloated on the center line, to fresh prints at the petroglyphs, to the feral galaxy of spring. Joel mentioned I've been teaching at the prison for some time. I'm going to read this poem as kind of a prelude to one of the poems from the guys in the prison. 2 weeks ago, I went out, and I've been out there for almost 25 years, and I've been teaching 2 of these guys for that entire time. And this poem I'm about to read you is about his experience going before the 7 Supreme Court justices, the Attorney General, and the Governor. Also, 3 or 4 years ago, to get his sentence commuted to life with the possibility of parole. And I won't tell you how that ends until I read the poem. But 2 weeks ago, I went out, and the other gentleman that I've been working with was granted parole. And he will be out soon, and his work is astonishing, and I hope he can make it in this world. His painting and his poetry is as good as anybody that I know that's writing. So this is to Bobby, the other gentleman, when he went before the Supreme Court justices. He literally sang his poem to them when they asked him if he had anything to say, a cappella, in front of these judges, when everyone in the room was shaking like a leaf, including myself, including his public defender. The Chief Justices tell me this is the day of the year that they loathe. They have to do this twice a year, and they feel like they have to play God, and they can't stand it, but it's a requirement of their job. A leaf at the Board of Pardons for Bobby. 1. There's a reference to Sudun Bo, the Sun poet that wrote about this very same thing 1,000 years ago. Sometimes I think we still have a lot to learn. 1. I sit in the resplendent shadow of sun, unjudged by the warmth, the blue light that begins with dawn. All week I managed the melancholy of meetings, and Tuesday heard the breath of legal gods pronounce merciful judgment on my friend, imprisoned for the duration. How does sun come to him now, through the speckled bars of triumph that only yesterday built the shelter of no regret? And if a man can return to such light, such repose in the calm of this Friday before Thanksgiving, is there any reason to hope for the light beyond his cave? There is. Only the blue and white tendrils will bend steel to release him, crush the moonlit dark that for decades confined him to wander the lunar cliff. 2. I think of Suding Po in the court of moonlight, judging the pitiful convicts in chains, unable to free them like the ancients on New Year's Eve. Afraid of losing his government meal, he woke with the shame of those in his charge. How is it a God of man judges those with only leaves for tongues? And stammering in their confusion, what do they say that has not been broken by tongues? They say nothing and listen to the masters of the court, who today found one worthy of his tongue, his idea of being the sound of bells that will ring in the small cathedral of the voice made fully human. So he did get his sentence commuted, and he also went up for parole 2 weeks ago, and I have not found out if he was granted parole, but my guess is not, because one of the parole board commissioners is very vindictive, and I don't think she's going to let him out as long as she's alive and on the board. So I want to take a little diversion. I keep dropping this receipt. I guess I'll leave it where it goes. So this is the journal we publish of their work, and I do it sporadically. We've done it 14, 15 times over the 2 decades. I want to read, there's a lot of great art in here and a lot of great poetry. I'm just going to read you one short poem from the gentleman that was granted parole. Maybe someday he'll be able to come to Utah to read from his work. This is by Ismael Garcia Santillanes. That's his name. We call him Izzy. For my friend Bill, morning snow on the prison ground. 1, prisoners. I cannot think of a better day to write a letter. The ground is a blank sheet. The steps of prisoners are words they never speak. They just keep walking. 2, angels. I cannot believe this is everything. Over the pine nut range, the clouds are scrolls of papyrus, and I with an eternity of love to write. That's by Izzy. I'll read you some more when he's out. So I'm really grateful to have a relationship with so many fine poets here. I was telling Lance, Dave Lee's a dear friend. I'm thankful to Katie for coming. And Ken Brewer had an incredible effect on the workshop too. I've been working on a memoir for the last several years, and there's an entire chapter dedicated to his last book of poems, which I brought into the workshop. And one of the young guys in the workshop was a cancer survivor, and it changed how he wrote. He wrote his breakthrough poem after we read Whale Song. And so I'm deeply grateful for Ken's presence then and now. Letter to Ken in Farthest Logan for Ken Brewer. I heard an owl come round the knees, but had no voice for the drumming. Could say nothing to the poet of mountains east, and the hoot would not go down. Out of the salt flats flew the bulk of feathers to a white ridge, with a cabin and the musk of books, where a man climbs the shelf to readers, to blur the owl and its offering. The blind wait for spring below all buds shorn to stem. And like an orchid of the night, the owl stirs the cabin once again. No refuge here, the mind already swung to other heels, come round the door to nick and skin the shelves, that he might sing an anthem beyond the end. Well, I don't know what your political persuasion is, but I'm awfully glad that we had the election results that we did last night. And so this is a poem about gratefulness and trying to still keep our heads up in the middle of this time we live in. Somehow I think we could do a little better if we could find a way to share what we all have. I work with people that don't get to participate in this discussion. So it's often funny when I hear all the prognosticators, particularly on the tube, talking about what real life is like. Anyways, this is a love song to the world that we might be able to share one day. Stacking wood in heavy snow days before Christmas. In this time of war that will not console, but could it be any other time, there is no need but forgiveness. Far from my own small hand that condemns dead wood to ash, there is but dust to divide. But could it be a dust of snow to summon the words we could not speak, when or if such beauty becomes our world to share? This next poem is a poem to my mother, who's been this fireball of energy for 83 years. She's a dancer. She was a musician. She taught kids English. She taught all my friends to read when I was growing up. And now she's just been having incredible trouble with her physical health, which is tormenting all of us. There's 4 brothers and sisters, and she's the last of her generation. So I want to sing this poem for her. Running to Southern California for my mother. I grew up in Southern California. Because the sycamore sky is greased with rain and wind, my mother steadies her house for the return of family from their destinations. Folk, kin, blood, beauty. And whether we know our names to be son or daughter who rose from the green and blue landscape, trimmed for the hands that bore us, she stands shaving onions to enchiladas. The red sauce dribbles to olives and avocado like dew in the trumpet flowers out her window. The fallen shoots of bottle brush on the tile. And when the prodigal thrust is over, she'll trace the orbit of us, alone on our roads in the comfort of dust. This is a song that took me about 15 years to write. I don't usually write in meter and rhyme, but it was a scene that I've seen played out up and down the Central American, Mexican, and Latin American coasts. The kids, no matter where they are, no matter what country, no matter how poor, always are floating behind the food vendors, wherever they are on the beach. And it took me a long time to try and put this into a poem, but I've seen it repeated in every coastal community from here to the tip of Chile. It's entitled Los Vendedores, which is just a cognate for vendors, and the tortilla vendor, the helado vendor, the ice cream vendor, and the peanut vendor in the poem. It's a short poem, and if you don't know Spanish, you'll get it. It's not about the Spanish words. It's about food and children, 2 things that I've been working on for a long time. Los Vendedores. Out of the sand they come, crowing like cocks in the morning sun, chanting their strange melodious hymns to food. Tortillero, helado, maní tostado. And the children, burnished and thin, scurry to meet the musical men, and the women, smoked in their shawls, float on brooms behind them, and and the beach is never still, with the halo of hunger overhead. How am I doing on time? Okay, I think I'll do one or two more and turn it over to Lance. So I want to read one more that has a Utah connection, and then I'll close with a love song to my wife. The last couple of years, not this one, but the one before that and the one before that, I went on a long bike ride through southern Utah with my good friend and neighbor, the principal at the high school. He's a real nut on his bike. I mean, he just rides as if, there's no tomorrow. I went along for the comedy, but we rode all through the flanks of Bryce and Zion and Escalante. We did a huge 500-mile circuit. It was just beautiful. We rode through the night. I turned off all the lights in the car and the bike and rode under starlight on a ridge with just these incredible cliffs on both sides for 20 minutes and no sound at 2:30 in the morning. It was the most incredible thing I've ever done. I'll never forget it. So this is some of the vignettes that I wrote, because when I'm riding my bicycle, I'm in this beautiful place and I'm writing about it. And these are some of them. They're somewhat like haiku, they're not haiku. Now I sit the saddle to freedom, 12 noon. Strangely wonderful it is to bike this path through eastern Arizona without a belonging to say my name. 5:30 p.m. Crow at my back, cattle in the creek meadow, and wildfire beyond the ridge. Is Snyder still in the lookout tower? 6:30 p.m. Mountain bluebird, buffalo, and perhaps an angel below the roadside cross. Her death came like rain. 8:30 p.m. Sunset on the red-orange rocks. So this is what Abby saw. A bike path leads to nowhere, into the mouth of Bryce Canyon. A full moon rises. And I'm going to close with this one. I have a dear friend who spent several years working on a book about the caribou migration on the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge shelf, and he was like turning 60, and he was afraid to go write this book about them, although he'd been interested in it all of his life, and he's an incredible nonfiction writer. He's won major awards for his books, and he was terrified to go do this thing that he'd been thinking about all of his life, and I told him, you must go, and I'll go with you. So we spent a week. We were flown into a little tiny island that was underwater the night before by this crazy bush pilot, and spent a week on this island as the caribou were coming over to calve on the shelf about 15 miles from us, and they go on this huge journey. It's 3,000 miles, the longest and oldest mammalian migration on Earth, 150,000 animals. The following winter we went up to the Yukon, and in the middle of winter, where there's two colors, gray and light gray, and we watched them in their wintering grounds. And these animals dwarf deer, although they're in the deer family, and they live on lichen, and they cut the snow and the ice with their hoof, and they get lichen, and it feeds a 400-pound animal. I don't know how. So again, started with a poem to my sons, end with one to my wife, and as I told you, when I'm away from people that I love, this is what I do. Letter to my wife from the coastal plain, Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. You have lived with me longer than stone, with its unchosen mate of soil, and there is no perfect reason for this, save your willingness to be fractured by force, greater than either of us here in the last decades of our lives. For 5 days I have sat riverside with the migratory birds and the first wild crocus to risk its full height of 1 inch before tonight's killing freeze. In the haze of a quarter century's love for you, I think no woman would rise from rock to make her purple wings felt on this June day. But of course, you have, and have again, to save me with petals that otherwise would fall to the grave descent of lying alone in this valley of Arctic water. When I wake from winter cold, it is like the resurrection of field grass in this raw place without you, and I am steadied by your resolve to return to the unborn field of my brown hands, witness to the morning you broke from earth, the rooted shadow of what I was. Thank you very much.